I have the full transcript. Let me write the news story. 10 nan fu tum fu tuk pa Phil, Emma Whitmore, Gerald, Diane, David, Emma, Marcus, Lily, Priya, Claire, Sophie, Nathan, Joanna. The call came at 6:47 in the morning. I know the exact time because I had just poured my first cup of coffee, standing at my kitchen window watching the fog roll over the city below, feeling that specific quiet satisfaction I had spent years earning. My phone buzzed on the counter. I glanced at the screen. My stepfather. I let it ring. He called again immediately, then my mother, then my stepfather again. 3 calls in under 90 seconds. I set my mud down. Something was wrong. I answered on the 4th call. "We need to meet," he said. No hello, no good morning. Just that flat, controlled voice he used when he wanted you to know he was serious. "Today, bring your business documents. All of them." "Good morning to you too, Ray," I said. "This isn't a joke, Vivienne." It never was with him. I had been waiting for something like this for 2 years, since the interview. Since the magazine profile ran with a photo of me standing in front of my distribution center, arms crossed, headline reading, "Self-made at 27. How Vivienne car-built a 7-figure logistics brand from a laptop and a storage unit." I had seen the way Ray looked at that photo when my mother forwarded it to the family group chat. Not proud, not warm, calculating. He was a man who believed everything in proximity to him was partly his. My mother had learned that the hard way. I had been learning it my whole life. I should tell you who Ray is before I tell you what he did. My mother married him when I was 11. He wasn't a bad man in any obvious way. No shouting, no cruelty at the dinner table. He was worse than that. He was the kind of man who kept score in a ledger you couldn't see until he decided to show it to you. He had a daughter from his first marriage. Her name was Tara. Tara was beautiful and loud and always in the center of every room, and Ray loved her the way a man loves the proof of his own best qualities. He paid for her college, her apartment in Austin, her yoga teacher certification, her essential oils business that lasted 8 months. When that failed, he funded her second attempt at a lifestyle brand. When that collapsed, he quietly covered her debt and bought her a new laptop so she could start fresh. He never once offered to help me with anything. I don't say that bitterly, I say it factually. He made it very clear in the language of omission that I was my mother's project. He tolerated me the way you tolerate a neighbor's cat, politely at a distance, with no real obligation. So I built my own everything. I started in logistics because I understood one thing that most 22-year-olds didn't. Moving physical objects from one place to another was the invisible machinery behind everything people cared about. Every product, every order, every next-day delivery. I started as a coordinator for a freight company, learned the software, learned the gaps, figured out which inefficiencies small businesses were bleeding money through because they couldn't afford dedicated operations staff. Then I became that staff, on contract, for multiple clients at once. By 25, I had 7 clients and 2 contractors working under me. By 27, I had a small distribution center, a warehouse management system I had built to my specifications, and enough revenue that the number genuinely scared me the first time I saw the annual summary. I had not told Ray any of this. My mother knew in the broad strokes. She knew I was doing well, that I had employees, that I owned the building I operated out of. But I had kept the specifics deliberately vague because I knew, the same way you know a storm is coming from the smell in the air, that the day Ray understood the actual scale of what I had built, something would shift. The magazine changed that. We met at their house on a Sunday afternoon. My mother opened the door. She looked tired and apologetic in the same expression, the way she always looked when Ray had set something in motion that she wasn't fully comfortable with but had decided not to stop. "He's in the office," she said quietly. Ray was standing at his desk when I walked in. Not sitting, standing with a manila folder in front of him, which told me this had been rehearsed. "Sit down," he said. I sat. Not because he told me to, but because I wanted to be comfortable for whatever this was. He opened the folder and slid a single document across the desk toward me. It was a one-page summary at the top of what looked like a much thicker file underneath. I picked it up. Proposed Equity Agreement. Carr Family Business Contribution Settlement. I read it twice. Then I set it down. "You want 25% of my company," I said. "It's fair," Ray said. He sat now, folding his hands on the desk like a man who had practiced this. "When you were 16, I let you use the business credit card to purchase your first software subscription. I have the statement. That was a business resource I extended to you in good faith." I stared at him. "The subscription was $47, I said. "It was a starting point I provided. Without that starting point, there's no business. Ray, I paid that card back the same week with money I made babysitting." He waved his hand slightly, as if the details were beside the point. "That's not the only thing. You used our address as your registered business address for the first 18 months. That's our property, our legal exposure. We didn't charge you for that. We were family. And there it was. We also supported you emotionally and logistically during your startup years," he continued. "Your mother drove you to networking events. I reviewed your first contracts. That's consulting time. That's real value." "You looked at 2 contracts," I said, "for about 10 minutes each. The point, Vivienne, is that this business was built on a foundation of family support. I think 25% is generous. Some people would argue for more." I looked at the folder. I looked at him. I looked at the way he had arranged himself, composed, reasonable, a businessman discussing a business matter. "And if I say no?" I asked. He opened the folder fully and slid the rest of the papers across. "Then I'll need to file a civil claim for unjust enrichment. My attorney has already drafted the complaint." I picked up the papers. It was real. An actual legal complaint, already filled out, already signed by an attorney whose name I recognized from billboards downtown. Ray hadn't come to have a conversation. He had come to deliver terms. "I'd also like to talk about Tara," he said. "She has a background in content and brand building. With your distribution infrastructure and her creative direction, there's a real opportunity here. This isn't just about what you owe us. It's about what we could build together." And there it was. The rest of it. This wasn't about $47 or a registered address. Tara's latest venture had collapsed. Ray needed to redirect her somewhere with a foundation under it. A foundation I had built. And he had decided mine was the most convenient one to annex. I gathered the papers into a neat stack. I put them back in the folder. I stood up. "I'll have my attorney reach out," I said. His name was Patrick, and he had been my attorney since I incorporated. He was the kind of lawyer who listened to the whole story before he said anything, and when he finally spoke, it was usually one sentence that reframed everything. I told him everything. The meeting, the folder, the $47 credit card charge, the registered address, the consulting time claim, the Tara angle. Patrick was quiet for a moment. "Did he give you copies of the tax returns for his business?" he asked. "No." "Why?" "Because if he's claiming that the support he extended to you constitutes a business contribution or consulting arrangement, then the IRS would expect to see that income declared. If he's been advising clients informally, taking value in exchange for services, and not declaring it, that's a problem for him, not you." I thought about that. "He has a property management company," I said slowly. "About 12 units. He manages them himself." "Has he ever mentioned anything about the financials being complicated?" "I thought about a dinner 2 years ago. Ray half complaining about a bad quarter, my mother changing the subject quickly. A comment Tara made once about her dad floating everything on credit, the way he had funded her ventures, not from a position of abundance, but from a position of someone who needed to believe he was still in a position of abundance. "Pull everything you can find," I said. What Patrick's forensic accountant found took 11 days and felt like peeling back wallpaper to find the wall was rotting underneath. Ray had been managing his property portfolio in a way that worked on paper but not in practice. He had been pulling cash from a joint business account he shared with a silent partner, a cousin who trusted him completely, to cover personal expenses, including Tara's various ventures, without the cousin's knowledge. He had been structuring these withdrawals to look like maintenance costs. He had not been declaring rental income consistently, and the $47 credit card charge he wanted to leverage for 25% of my company? That card had a pattern of business-personal mixing that would make any IRS agent reach for a highlighter. He hadn't just tried to use the law against me. He had handed us a mirror to hold up. The hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday. I wore a gray blazer and flat shoes, and I got there early enough to watch Ray and my mother arrive. Ray was dressed carefully, not too expensive, not too casual, presenting as a reasonable man with a legitimate grievance. My mother walked half a step behind him, holding her handbag with both hands. Tara wasn't there. I noticed that immediately. Ray's attorney made his opening very well. He was articulate and sympathetic, and he made the $47 charge sound like seed funding for a Fortune 500 company. He talked about family trust, about implied agreements, about the registered address as a material business contribution. He talked about Ray reviewing contracts as consulting that had never been compensated. The judge, a methodical man who had clearly seen every variety of family financial dispute, listened without expression. Then Patrick stood up. He didn't raise his voice. He set a single binder on the table. Your Honor, the plaintiff has argued that the support he provided my client constitutes a business arrangement deserving of equity compensation. We don't dispute that he helped. We dispute that it rises to the level of a formal contribution. But more importantly, if the plaintiff insists on characterizing his support as business services rendered, then we need to ask where that income appears on his tax returns. Patrick opened the binder and walked the judge through it, page by page. The rental income discrepancies, the commingled accounts, the withdrawals characterized as maintenance expenses that corresponded to the dollar with deposits into Tara's personal account during the period of her first business launch. The pattern of structuring that, at minimum, warranted a serious conversation with federal investigators. The plaintiff's attorney objected twice. The judge overruled him twice. Mr. Calloway, the judge said, looking at Ray over his reading glasses, are you prepared to address these discrepancies today? Ray looked at his attorney. His attorney looked at the table. Your Honor, his attorney said, we would need additional time to review the documents provided by opposing counsel. I imagine you would, the judge said dryly. He dismissed the injunction. He unfroze my accounts. He noted in the record that the matter of the plaintiff's business finances warranted referral to the appropriate federal agency. Then he looked at Ray for a long moment without saying anything else. Ray was gray, not angry, not purple with indignation. Just gray, like the color had drained out of him along with the certainty that he was going to win. I didn't feel triumphant walking out of that courtroom. I want to be honest about that because I think people expect a clean, bright feeling at the end of these stories. Justice delivered, villain defeated, survivor vindicated. What I actually felt was something older and quieter. Tired. The particular exhaustion of having had to fight someone who should have been on your side. My mother was standing outside in the hallway. Ray had gone ahead to the car. She looked at me. I looked at her. Vivienne, she said. Her voice was careful. I know, I said. He really believed he was owed something. I know that too. She pressed her lips together. I didn't know about the money, the account. His cousin. I know. She looked down at her hands. What happens now? For your accounts, I said. Separate yours from his as soon as possible. Today if you can. Patrick can refer you to someone who can help you structure it so your assets are protected from what's coming. She looked up. Her eyes were wet. And us? She said. What about us? I had thought about this. I had thought about it more than I'd thought about the legal strategy, honestly. She was my mother. She had also stood in her husband's office while he slid a legal complaint across a desk at her daughter and said nothing. I love you, I said. I'll call you next week. I walked to my car. I didn't run. I didn't look back. I drove to my warehouse because there was nowhere else I wanted to be. I badged in through the side entrance, walked past the rows of shelving I had spent 4 years filling, and sat at my operations desk in the quiet of the building after hours with just the hum of the HVAC overhead. I pulled up my dashboard. Orders from the past 3 weeks of frozen accounts had backed up into a queue that would take 2 weeks to process. My team had kept things running as best they could. There were messages from clients checking in, some worried, some patient. There were notes from my operations manager that were calm and methodical and made me feel, briefly, like I might cry. I didn't cry. I started working through the queue instead. I found out about Tara 2 weeks later, not from Ray or my mother, but from a mutual contact who had seen her LinkedIn. She had updated her profile, new city, new title, founder and creative director, Palette Studio, a new venture, a branding consultancy. Her profile photo was polished and confident. No mention of her parents, no mention of Ray's situation. She had seen the ship going down and she had already bought a lifeboat and paddled quietly away. I thought about calling her. I thought about what I would even say. Then I thought about the fact that she had never once, in 16 years of being loosely considered family, called me when anything went wrong in my life. Not when I lost my first major client. Not when my warehouse flooded and I spent a weekend there with contractors and a shop vac. Not once. I closed LinkedIn and went back to work. Ray's situation resolved itself the way these things do, slowly, then all at once. His cousin filed a civil suit. The IRS opened an inquiry. The property management business, which had been leveraged to the ceiling anyway, became impossible to sustain under the weight of legal fees and frozen receivables. My mother separated her accounts in the first week. She kept the house. It was in her name, had been since before the marriage, and Patrick made sure that was very clearly documented before anything else moved. She called me on a Sunday morning, about 6 weeks after the hearing. "He moved out," she said. "How are you doing?" I asked. A long pause. "Relieved," she said like she was admitting something. "I didn't expect to feel that. I thought I'd be more scared." "You built a life before him," I said. "You remember how?" She laughed a little. It sounded like the kind of laugh that has some crying in it. We talked for an hour. About nothing important. About her garden and my new client and a show she'd been watching. It was the longest we had talked in years, and it was easy in a way that felt like something returning rather than something new. I don't know what I would call what we are now. Work in progress. Two people finding out what's possible once the pressure is gone. The month after the hearing was my best revenue month in 4 years. I don't know if that's meaningful or just timing. Maybe both. I do know that I spent those weeks working with a clarity I hadn't had in a long time. Not the brittle focus of someone bracing for impact, but the wide-open concentration of someone who has looked at the worst-case scenario and survived it. I hired 2 more people. I signed a contract with a regional retailer that had been in negotiation for months. I finally had the break room repainted. It had been an ugly beige since I bought the building, and I had kept saying I'd get to it, and I got to it. Small thing. But I stood in the doorway of that freshly painted room and felt something I hadn't expected. Pride. Not the defended kind, the kind you carry like armor. The quiet kind, the kind that doesn't need an audience. If you grew up being the invisible one, the one who wasn't celebrated, wasn't invested in, wasn't considered the return on anyone's investment, I want you to hear this. They were wrong about you, not accidentally, not because they didn't know better. They were wrong because it was easier to invest in the one who glittered than to look carefully at the one who was quietly building something real. That invisibility was not a wound. It was a gift you didn't ask for. It meant you built in the dark. It meant when you finally stood in the light, it was on a foundation they didn't touch. And when they came for it, because some of them will come for it, you will be ready. Because you have been preparing your whole life, even when you didn't know that's what you were doing. You are not their portfolio. You are not their return on investment. You are not what they failed to see. You are what you built, and that is entirely, permanently, irreversibly yours. I thought a lot about what Ray actually did wrong, not the lawsuit. That was just the visible part. What he did wrong started much earlier, quietly, in the way he looked at people and saw what they could give him rather than who they were. He raised Tara to believe she deserved things before she earned them. Every failed venture got a fresh check. Every collapse got a soft landing. And what that did, slowly, invisibly, was rob her of the only thing that actually builds a person. The experience of having to figure it out when there's no safety net, of staying up until 2 in the morning, not because someone told you to, but because the work isn't done and it's your work and it matters to you. Of failing at something small and having to stand back up without anyone carrying you. Tara never got that. Ray thought he was loving her. What he was actually doing was weakening her, one rescue at a time. And me, the one he ignored, the one who was never the priority, the one who had to find her own way to every networking event and figure out contract law from YouTube videos at 22, I got the harder thing, which turned out to be the better thing. I got to build myself, not because I was tougher or smarter or more deserving, just because no one was paying enough attention to stop me. There's something true about the way cause and effect actually works that people don't talk about enough. The choices we make don't just affect the moment we make them, they compound. Ray's choice to pour everything into Tara and nothing into me compounded for 15 years, until one day he looked up and realized she had nothing to stand on and I had built a foundation he wanted a piece of. His choice to treat people as assets compounded until he tried it on the wrong person and the whole structure collapsed under its own weight. Not because the universe punished him. Because that's just what hollow things do. Eventually, they can't hold. What I know about integrity now, after all of it, is that it's not dramatic. It's not a moment. It's 1,000 small decisions to do the work correctly when no one is watching, to pay the card back the same week, to register the business properly, to keep clean records even when you're exhausted and it would be easier not to. I didn't do those things because I was thinking about some future courtroom. I did them because they were right and because I was building something I wanted to be able to stand behind. That's what Ray didn't understand. He thought my advantage was the warehouse, the contracts, the revenue number in the magazine. He thought if he could extract a percentage of those things, he would have extracted my success. But those things were just the result. The actual thing, the habits, the standards, the willingness to stay honest even when it costs you, that was never in any folder he could slide across a desk. You can't sue someone for their character. You can't foreclose on the years of work that built it. If you're in the middle of something hard right now, building something without support, invisible to the people who should be paying attention, I want you to know that the invisibility is not the whole story. Sometimes the people who have to figure it out alone figure it out better. Not always, but sometimes. And when you get to the other side of it, what you have is entirely yours. No one can touch it. No one can claim a percentage of who you became. That's the part they never account for.